300 years of sightings, different witnesses, different eras, yet the creature's description keeps coming back, almost unchanged.
In the freezing winter of 1909, industrial towns across the Delaware River Valley locked their doors not out of fear of men, but out of absolute terror of something that defied every known law of nature. For a full week, local police forces, railroad workers, and hundreds of armed citizens chased a winged bipedal entity that left pristine cloven footprints across rooftops, through locked backyards, and directly across deep snowdrifts where no normal animal could possibly travel. Yet when researchers and historians began pulling back the layers of newspaper archives, official police logs, and centuries-old local testimonies, they realized this wasn't an isolated panic of the early 20th century. It was merely a single chapter in a 300-year-old catalog of terror that continues to haunt the dense, primordial swamplands of the American East. What was this creature that stubbornly refused to disappear from human memory, and why do modern accounts match colonial descriptions down to the smallest anatomical detail? Before we uncover what truly happened, drop a comment below and let me know where in the world you are watching from and what time it is right now. Let's see how far this investigation reaches. The mystery begins deep within the labyrinthine expanse of the New Jersey Pine Barrens, a vast, desolate wilderness of stunted pitch pines, cedar swamps, and acidic tannin-stained streams. To understand the endurance of the legend, one must first understand the landscape itself. Spanning over 1 million acres, the Barrens have long served as a geographical island, isolated from the rapid industrialization of the surrounding eastern seaboard. For centuries, isolated settlements of charcoal burners, glassmakers, and independent lumbermen, known locally as the Pineys, carved out harsh, solitary lives in the shadows of the forest. It was among these isolated communities that the first whispers of a monstrous anomaly took root during the early 18th century, long before the United States became a sovereign nation. Historical records and colonial folklore point toward an origin steeped in isolation, superstition, and tragedy. The most famous traditional account attributes the birth of the creature to Mother Leeds, a local woman who, in 1735, found herself pregnant with her 13th child. Overwhelmed with poverty and desperation, she allegedly cursed the unborn infant, crying out that the child would be the devil himself. According to the oral traditions passed down through generations of Pine Barrens families, the child was born during a stormy night, morphing instantly from a normal infant into a hideous creature with a horse-like head, bat-like wings, horns, and a split tail. It immediately attacked the midwife and family members before slaughtering the livestock and tearing through the chimney into the stormy night sky. While historians treat the Mother Leeds tale as classic colonial folklore designed to explain the harsh realities of rural isolation and infant mortality, investigators have long noted that the physical descriptions of the entity remained remarkably consistent across centuries where mass media did not exist to standardize a myth. Long before sensationalist newspapers capitalized on the panic, local farmers reported livestock mutilated with surgical precision, poultry vanishing without a trace, and strange, unearthly screams echoing across the cedar bogs during moonless nights. These were not the accounts of superstitious travelers passing through. These were the hard testimonies of pragmatic frontiersmen who knew the difference between native wildlife like bears, bobcats, or great horned owls, and something entirely outside their collective experience. The mystery escalated dramatically from January 16th to January 23rd, 1909, transforming local folklore into a statewide phenomenon of unprecedented panic. In a single week, thousands of citizens across multiple towns in New Jersey and Pennsylvania reported seeing the creature. Post offices, trolley cars, and factories were temporarily shut down, schools closed their doors, and night shifts at local mills were canceled as armed vigilante posses scoured the snowy woods. In Woodbury, a police officer fired point-blank at a glowing-eyed creature perched on a roof, reporting that the bullets seemed to pass right through it before it let out a piercing, blood-curdling shriek and bounded away across the rooftops with effortless grace. As investigators waded through the conflicting accounts of 1909, a chilling pattern emerged from the archives. The footprints found during the height of the panic did not match any known quadruped or bipedal mammal. They measured roughly 4 inches long, resembling a cloven hoof, yet they appeared in straight lines over fences, across frozen riverbeds, and on top of snow-covered roofs where no ladder had been placed. Zoologists and naturalists at the time attempted to dismiss the tracks as the prances of stray dogs or leaping rabbits distorted by melting snow, but local trackers scoffed at the explanations, pointing out that the tracks went straight up the sides of barns and continued uninterrupted on the other side. The mystery took an even stranger turn when historical researchers began unearthing pre-19th century accounts that matched the 1909 descriptions almost verbatim. Joseph Bonaparte, the former king of Spain and older brother of Napoleon Bonaparte, reportedly encountered the strange creature while hunting on his sprawling estate along the Rancocas Creek in 1820. Bonaparte, a man of education and high status, left behind written notes describing a bizarre winged bipedal that watched him from the tree line with glowing red eyes before vanishing into the dense brush with terrifying speed. If a royal exile with no connection to local folklore could stumble upon the exact same anomaly a century earlier, the argument that the legend was merely a localized hoax began to collapse under the weight of historical scrutiny. Yet despite the mounting pile of consistent eyewitness testimony and physical evidence collected by early investigators, official science offered a wall of silence or outright dismissal. The creature possessed an uncanny ability to vanish the moment organized posses closed in, leaving behind only frozen tracks and trembling witnesses. As the panic of 1909 slowly faded from the daily newspapers, the mystery did not die. It simply retreated back into the shadowy depths of the Pine Barrens, waiting for another generation to stumble upon its territory. But what investigators of the early 20th century failed to realize was that the physical traces left in the snow were merely superficial hints of a much deeper, much disturbing puzzle that connects ancient colonial anxieties to modern biological anomalies. The investigation into the anomaly deepens when examining the modern era, proving that the creature did not vanish with the advent of paved highways and electricity. Throughout the mid to late 20th century, park rangers, hunters, and late-night motorists continued to report unsettling encounters along the remote stretches of Route 542 and the desolate logging roads cutting through the heart of the Pine Barrens. Unlike the panicked hysteria of 1909, these modern witnesses were frequently solitary individuals with no prior knowledge of local folklore, making their consistent descriptions of a bipedal, winged entity with luminescent eyes all the more compelling to serious researchers of unexplained phenomena. Consider the detailed account documented by a pair of experienced truck drivers in 1951 who were hauling timber late at night through the Wharton State Forest. According to their official statements given to local authorities, their truck suddenly lost electrical power as a massive silhouette descended from the upper branches of a towering pine tree, landing directly on the hood of the moving vehicle. Both men described an intense, musky odor filling the cab, accompanied by the chilling sound of sharp claws scraping against reinforced steel. Before they could bring the heavy truck to a complete halt, the creature launched itself back into the darkness, leaving deep, jagged gouge marks scored into the metal hood, marks that independent mechanics later verified could not have been made by any native animal inhabiting the eastern woodlands. Skeptics and cryptozoologists have spent decades debating the nature of the entity, attempting to force a 300-year-old mystery into the rigid boxes of conventional science. Some researchers propose the biological hypothesis that a surviving population of an unknown large arboreal marsupial or an undiscovered species of giant nocturnal raptor adapted to the dense canopy of the cedar swamps. Others suggest psychological explanations, pointing to mass hysteria, sleep paralysis, and the contagious nature of fear in isolated rural environments where isolation breeds hypervigilance. Yet neither biological plausibility nor psychological contagion can easily account for physical evidence like unexplained structural damage to vehicles, synchronized multi-town sightings across vast distances, and historical continuity spanning over 3 centuries without interruption. The deeper investigators probe into the archives, the more the boundaries between history, folklore, and hard reality begin to blur. Local historians have noted that sightings of the creature frequently correlate with periods of societal stress, economic depression, or environmental disruption in the region. During the great industrial expansion of the 19th century, when timber clear-cutting threatened the ancient heart of the Pine Barrens, reports surged dramatically. When modern suburban sprawl began encroaching upon the edges of the wilderness in the late 20th century, the encounters returned with renewed intensity. It is as if the landscape itself possesses a collective memory, manifesting a physical guardian or a psychological projection of the untamed wilderness pushing back against human encroachment. What makes the persistence of the Jersey Devil so profoundly unsettling is not merely the terrifying physical description of wings, horns, and cloven hooves, but its utter defiance of explanation. In an age of satellite imagery, constant digital surveillance, and GPS mapping, millions of acres of dense, swampy wilderness remain largely impassable and unexplored. Search parties looking for lost hikers or downed aircraft in the Barrens routinely encounter vast, impenetrable thickets where human foot has likely never trodden. Within these forgotten pockets of the American landscape, the boundary between what we know and what we refuse to believe becomes terrifyingly thin. The legacy of the Jersey Devil transcends the borders of New Jersey, evolving into a fundamental archetype of the American unexplained. It shares a philosophical kinship with other elusive Rougeval mysteries, like the Mothman of West Virginia or the Bigfoot of the Pacific Northwest, phenomena that challenge humanity's comfortable assumption that we have mapped, categorized, and understood every corner of our own world. The witnesses who stared into those glowing red eyes across 3 centuries were left fundamentally changed, haunted not just by a fleeting glimpse of a monster, but by the sudden, terrifying realization that the familiar world we think we control is just a thin veneer over something vastly older, wilder, and entirely indifferent to our existence. As the fog rolls back across the dark, silent waters of the cedar swamps, the tracks in the snow remain etched into history, defying every attempt to explain them away as trickery, hysteria, or misidentified wildlife. The investigators of yesterday and today are left standing at the exact same precipice, staring into the dark canopy of the pines, where the boundary between myth and reality dissolves into shadow. The creature does not need to be captured, proven, or understood by modern science to retain its power over the human imagination. It simply waits in the dark, a permanent reminder that there are still mysteries on this earth that time cannot erode and civilization cannot tame.